Hello and welcome to Monday's episode of the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. I am your host, a very hungover but very happy Craig Fowler, after Scotland have officially qualified for Euro 2024 in Germany. We're going, lads. We're fucking going. Yes! And to help me look back on the entire campaign as a whole in this episode, it is Tony Anderson.
Hello.
And Craig Anderson.
And the good thing is, it's not even the entire campaign. We're only talking about 75% of the campaign, because we're in easy street, like, got hundreds of games in the bag. We could have like qualified twice this time round.
I know, it's incredible. To do it, the group that we had, to do it with 2 games to spare, and really should have been 3 games to spare, if a little bit of misfortune didn't befall us, then I think that might very well have happened on last Thursday evening, but we had to wait a few more days, and it was eventually confirmed. If I say eventually, it was, like I say, still got 2 games to spare, but it was confirmed with Spain defeating Norway 1-0 away from home. That was it. It was over. You guys will be doing a Patreon where you talk about that game, so we won't focus on that too much. I'm not going to take part in it because I was at a gig, so my
who'd you go and see?
For the rest of my life, Alex Leahy, Aussie indie singer, kind of songwriter, kind of indie rock.
Of course.
So when Scotland's passage to Germany was confirmed, I was just in like the middle of a gig, constantly looking at my phone. It's like the last couple of songs were playing.
I'm sure you weren't the only one.
No, there was actually. Oh God, I did ask his name and I've kind of blanked on it. I want to say Alan, but I'm not too sure. So I was at the bar and I was getting a drink, and that was when Spain scored, and then there was the lengthy VAR check. But when I got the notification through my phone, I was like suddenly like pumped my fist, and then the guy beside me was like, "Oh, I didn't even recognise you until you did that." And then he opened up his jacket that he was wearing, and he had a Terrace t-shirt on underneath.
Only recognises you when you celebrate. Okay, it's a new one. It's a new one.
I don't know. Maybe I do lots of celebrations all the time. I'm unaware of this character trait of me. I'm not sure.
Aye, it was an absolute fucking doddle, man. And like further, I know you were. There was a lot of pessimism, Scottish pessimism about it, but this team's just built differently. It is able to do things in whatever scenario it's put in. It's a bit of a Swiss Army knife of a team in terms of performances and in terms of what we have. I mean, I listened to what you were talking about with Ewan, and I agreed that the only thing we're really lacking is an X-factor player. But so that obviously, but when you've got the ability to play in lots of different ways, lots of different shapes, and you can do smash and grab, you can play with the ball or without the ball, you sort of just don't really need it as much, because you've got so much evolution, and you've got so much ways of still winning games even without that. But if you add that, then maybe you win everything. Good.
I think the other thing to add is, like, I was fortunate enough to be on the podcast we did after the last time we qualified, which we did more or less on the whistle. We maybe did that about half an hour after that game finished. The feeling could not be further away this time. Like, that was like absolute euphoria. Like, it was a proper, like, I don't think I'll forget a single minute of like that experience, whereas like last night it was very much like it felt like one of these long time coming situations, like if your team are like 12 points clear in the title race, which I'm sure I was going to say none of us have experienced. You would have when Hearts won the championship the last time, Craig. I think, Tony, it wasn't that far off it when Hibs won it either, but it's just that way. It makes it a wee. It doesn't make it any less of an achievement. It's a bigger achievement, in fact, but it makes it a bit less like the memorable part doesn't become the ceiling, the success. It becomes like the steps along the way, and I think we'll talk obviously about a couple of those. But the big moments weren't at the end of the campaign; they were kind of slap bang in the middle.
Yeah, especially when you also. There's not as big a surprise this time. This isn't the end. Yeah. When we got the one against Serbia, you were probably thinking we're happy to be there, kind of chatter. But I'd say the expectations are miles higher this time. The achievement is miles better. But yeah, so now that it's not as euphoric a feeling, because I'm like, right, what's the next bit? We've got loads to go. Because I'd say draw dependent, you're looking now a good setup at this. What would be achievement is like getting to the quarterfinals. I think that would be a good tournament. Obviously that is like draw dependent, obviously, but if we don't get out of the groups, I would call it a failure.
Yeah, I
Again,
think that's fair to
depending
say.
on who you get. We should be looking. I mean, the way it's structured now, you're very unlucky if you win a game and don't get through in this format in the group stage. There are not many teams who that will apply to. So just win a game, and we should be winning 1 to 3 games no matter.
Have a goal scorer,
That's how
have
I
a
see
top
it.
scorer in international tournaments has got more than 1 goal. That'd be good for Scotland as well.
Right, let's go all the way back to March when the campaign was kicking off, home to Cyprus. Is it fair to say, in retrospect, Craig, that this was our worst performance?
You can make an argument. Probably it's either this or the Norway one. But yeah, this was a bit insipid. I think it was partly like there was none of the other games had an expectation about them. I would say even Georgia, there was it was just different. But it's almost like it was like the expectation of go out and entertain us, and that's not what this team's about. So, especially getting the early goal, it felt like it was quite flat after that. Like we definitely didn't play well, and I guess to an extent, when you're 1-0 up against a team that isn't going to hurt you that much, that can kind of happen, because I think there was a little bit of a sense of like we did have an eye on the following game, which was coming. We're playing Spain in the midweek, but it definitely wasn't a good performance, and I could sense it was very much one of those knife edge matches, because obviously we'd been successful in the Nations League campaign eventually, but that June with the Ukraine and Ireland games was still kind of not that far in the distant memory at that point. Like I think it was still hanging over some people, and I think all it would have taken was a Cyprus goal there, and there might have been a switch towards some negativity. But in retrospect, like looking back on the game, looking back on the highlights, Cyprus weren't hurting us, but I remember at the time just being a wee bit worried every time they broke up the park, because you're just thinking all it takes is someone to fall over or something, and
Nicky.
And that's it. Well, if it was going to happen, that was. I mean, it might not be the best moment for it to happen, given it could cost us the chance of winning the group. But it's probably not in the scheme of things, not the biggest, because just getting that win ended up being what mattered.
You kind of forget that like when the group even starts, and I think Scotland are a good case of not just because we got through the last time through the Nations League, but I think you can really see what the Nation League brings in terms of how you're able to evolve your team and build momentum that you can't really do before it, because there's such long breaks between campaigns, but you're still playing these competitive games. You're still trying to do something. Like, the change to the back four for those Nations League games and getting them built up so much momentum going into this qualifying campaign, because everyone I remember there being a lot of confidence that came off the back of that, because you're like, right, this team is fully evolved. And you also got the chance to bring Ryan Porteous in it, who went on to have a really, really good campaign after that you probably just wouldn't be able to do. It just doesn't have the same vibe when it's friendlies, even if you do change things, because you just know there's not, one of the teams isn't tried as much. Everyone's playing B players or reserve players trying to figure things out. So the Nations League, we've been able to use that to our advantage, and Steve Clark's managed to gain so much from it. And I think it's a big reason why we've become so good, because this team might have took even longer to get to the stage where you're beating Spain. If for example, you're good enough to do that without the Nations League campaign.
One thing we saw in that first game against Georgia, which then kind of leads us in nicely to the next game, was the rise of Scott McTominay. He came off the bench in that match and scored twice.
It's hard to believe he was on the bench. It's like that seems so long ago. They now never be on that. And I mean, Scott McTominay's just played through the entire team, centre half, up front, basically, and midfield. It's such a strange evolution that you just didn't see coming.
I feel probably he was always being kept in reserve a wee bit in that game, because I think they knew they needed the energy from him against Spain. But yeah, it was it was weird to think Ryan Jack started that game, and I've always been a big fan of Ryan Jack for Scotland. I think his days are numbered. I think he'll be doing well too.
Yeah, I was just going to say that shows you how
honest,
quickly things move in football, because you just can't imagine Ryan Jack starting a game for Scotland now, and this only took place, what's that, 7 months ago?
March, yeah. So it's but apart from that, because I was looking through the team lines last night, and apart from that, there was only actually 4 SPFL players appeared in this, which I think was quite a shift from what's happened before. Jack being one of them, and then I think Callum McGregor obviously played every game, and then Suter I think had a couple of appearances. I think both off the bench, and then Suter just had one appearance off the bench, and so did Lawrence Shankland, and I think that's been a wee shift as well. But yeah, Jack, I think, will be actually, to be honest, lucky to make it to Germany, which is a shame, because he was probably at his peak as a Scotland player and missed the last one through injury. Yeah. So there may be a sense of sentiment that might take him there, but as a player, he's clearly dropped off a bit. But as you say, McTominay came in, and I think I'm right in saying he'd only scored once for Scotland before that, which was obviously a massive one against Israel. But he's been a funny player, McTominay. Like, I've always felt like you just see him and you go like, there's a player there, but it took him so long for us to work out what he was. I think he had some good performances and some bad performances at centre half, but we knew that was I think that was important for him and for us, to be honest, because it let us build confidence with a guy that could pass the ball and stuff at the back, which has kind of helped us to integrate actual centre halves who can pass the ball, and who can actually, like, for example, deal with high diagonals and stuff properly.
Yeah, he bought us time. He bought us time as a player.
Yeah, but it also gave him the chance to pick up. I think he's on a ludicrous amount of Scotland caps, like, for a guy who only made his debut 5 years ago. Because that's the thing with this squad. Like, so many of them were either given their debut by Clark or in that very brief Alex McLeish era. Like, very few have actually hung around from the Strachan campaign. I think it's just Robertson, Tierney, Armstrong, McGinn, and one other that are still playing, who play, Kenny McLean, who played in that period, which is quite a small number of players. But yeah, McTominay is, for me, undoubtedly now a top level midfielder, and I think he shows that in at spells with his club. But I think there's stigma with him at Man United because he's like one of their homegrown players and one of their local lads and stuff, that I think that can be overlooked a wee bit. And I think there are a lot of people who don't appreciate the value of that. But all the intangibles in football, Scott McTominay has every single one of them. Like the determination, the kind of mentality, everything about that. He's to me, like, potentially the most important player in this team at this point. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but I just think, like, everything about him, it is very clear that he has been trained in a youth academy where players are trained to win. Now, that's also the youth academy where lots of really shit players come from as well, so it's not the only thing, but there's just something about him that
him and Ben Thornley trained to win. Exactly.
But yeah, there's just like, I think he's still vastly underrated. Exactly. But I do think he's vastly underrated for what he brings, and you saw that so much in this campaign. Like, everyone's talking about Haaland for this campaign, and he has scored the same number of goals in this group. So that in its own, like,
yeah, the best thing about this team, just what you mentioning there, that Scott McTominay is now possibly the most important player, is I feel that there's like an evolution of that nearly every 2 or 3 international breaks. I mean, there was a period where you were thinking this team wouldn't be able to function without Billy Gilmore, for example. That was that was widely thought. And I mean, it wasn't unfair. We thought it was like a linchpin type player that we just had to have to make us work. And then you also had the John McGinn, that he's like was the only player that you could rely on to score regularly. And now it's went on to someone else. And that just goes back into it's not just the evolution of the team in terms of its shape and stuff. It's the evolution of all these players and the fact that there's a lot of trust. Clark's built up trust, so there's time and there's space for players to move into different roles and for players to come in. And it looks like a really easy squad to join now. I know Elliot Anderson, for some reason, didn't like it, for whatever he said. But
too scared by it.
Yeah, people were having a laugh, possibly. But it just seems like really easy. People could just come in and like I'll use Ryan Porteous again as the example. Just come in and just hit the ground running, and there's no problem. It feels like he's been there for ages. And Angus Gunn just feels like they've been there for ages, and they never have any bother. It's so it's really, really interesting, and the discovery of those players as Clark's went, he's been able to get guys to come in, and it feels like they want to come in rather than him having to go for them. And you're hearing rumours about other players who want to join in, and fair play. But I do like the way that he's dealt with the whole Elliot Anderson thing, because he's just been like, well, if he wants to come, he'll just have to call me. I'm not calling him again, and that's absolutely fine. He knows where the number is. But yeah, it's great every time there's a new international break, there's a new most important player in the squad.
And I mean that was a theme of Clark's time at Kelly as well, where you felt like, oh yeah, this is a guy we're relying on, and then all of a sudden it wasn't, because it was someone else. And that's important, because opponents will start picking out a key man, and they'll be picked out, and then if someone else is stepping up, that's what we need. Because you talked about McGinn. I don't think McGinn's been really particularly good in this campaign, but he's still got 2 goals. He's still contributed, and there's no question of him being dropped or anything like that. But compared to
his best performance is probably in the Spain game as well.
Yeah, where everyone played well in that game. Everyone's played well in most games, to be honest. There's not really been a lot of poor performances, which makes this hard. But it's not been the John McGinn show the way it had been, and now you're a bit like, I think the last Euros or around about that time, had John McGinn been out, you'd have been like, right, that's us fucked. And now it's like, I would very much rather we had John McGinn, but there are other options.
So we're talking about, is there much more to say about the Spain game other than just saying it was undoubtedly the best performance that we put in this qualification campaign? And you can say, I was going to say the best moment. I don't know if it is the best moment, because we can get onto a very strong contender coming not long after. But yeah, it was certainly, in terms of, it was the match that showed us and gave us real belief that this could be a qualification campaign that was different from literally every single other one we've suffered through since the mid-90s.
We were the shits that night. Like, see how many times teams have turned up at Hampden and just like fucking annoyed us, like being diving all over the place and really physical and being in the referee's face and just doing all of that stuff. We did every single bit of that, and that's exactly what you need in a game like that. And I think it showed that there's so much character in the team, but then you can't just get away with that. You need quality as well. And I think the 2 finishes from McTominay, like the first one goes through the goalkeeper, but it's really well taken. The second one is superb, and the contributions from the 2 left backs that we managed to get in the team, both fantastic in their different ways. And I think Robertson has been excellent in this campaign. I think he's had some criticism, I think unfairly so most of the time, but I think he's been one of the key players.
My favourite moments of the campaign were in this game, and it's exactly what Craig's talking about there, like being the shits, the ruffling of the head and stuff, like ruffling their hair and taking ages over throw-ins and rolling about the deck. Very what people would normally think of it as quite Spanish traits, but we absolutely got under their skin and they lost it, and they were screaming at the ref, and what makes it better is you didn't just beat them, you sent them to the stratosphere. Their blood pressure must have been going through the roof, and then you get the whole Rodri thing after, and it was just like taking a team of that stature to the point that they nearly lose their fucking minds is incredible for a Scottish team to do.
And we can jump forward, but we did that again the other night. Like we had them in the same place, I think, where they were on the verge of losing it, and we unfortunately things didn't go our way that time. But that's something that's going to be really important, because we're going to come up against teams that are better than us. Like, we're going to have to beat teams that are better than us if we want to get anywhere, and we've shown that we can do it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like we could mention it when we get to the Spain game later on. I mean, in terms of the one that we lost, but to me that was still, as I said the other day when I done the podcast with you, and it's given me a lot of belief in this team that when we do go to Germany next summer, that if regardless of, like, say we do make it out of the groups and we get like a big team in the next round or even in the quarterfinals, I'm going to go in with a degree of confidence that yeah, we probably aren't going to win it, but I've got faith in this team that they could certainly pull off an upset. And I think we've really that was what that kind of second game showed, but also particularly the first one. How comfortable we were in that second half was just wild at Hampden. It was just you expected an onslaught, and they did have a lot of the ball and a lot of the territory, but we just never looked like we were really going to concede.
And it was a fervent atmosphere as well. It was so loud. It was so intimidating. Like, I know people talk about stadiums around the world, but in terms of like how loud it was and just how relentless it was that night, it was like one of those, like they would have come out of that with their heads spinning, definitely. And it kind of shows what we can be, I think.
Right, let's move on to the game in June. Away in Oslo, I remember thinking with about 5 minutes to go in this one, we're 1-0 down to an Erling Haaland penalty. And I was like, this isn't a great result. It's kind of to be expected. And Norway had already dropped points against Georgia, and we'd beaten Spain, so we did have still a bit of an advantage to hold. But I was like, I'm not watching this performance. I'm not sure that we're definitely going to beat Norway at Hampden. And then 2 goals in the last 3 minutes from Lyndon Dykes and Kenny McLean, and all of a sudden everything's rosy again. We've got 9 points out of possible 9 and just absolutely flying. But yeah, Craig, what a moment.
Yeah, what I love about that, so I was, I think I'd said this I think I did the podcast after this game. If I didn't, I'll say it again. We had my in-laws were round, none of them big into football, so I was just kind of retired upstairs to watch the game myself, basically, and it was roasting, if you remember, so I had the windows open, and obviously we scored the equaliser, and I went daft, and then I barely sat back down, and then we scored again, and I went even dafter, and to the point I went downstairs, and they were like, "Was that you?" And I was like, "Yes, it was me." And it was like, they were sitting out in the garden, and they could hear me. And I was thinking about the people that were, because I was watching it on the telly, but you know when you watch it on a stream, you're like 30 seconds behind. And I can actually imagine people just thinking that the second cheer they heard was just for the equaliser. And still, you know, it wasn't spoiled in any way because they were so close together. I think it was like 75 seconds apart or something, the 2 goals. And the Dykes one has a great degree of fortune about it. Now, it's still patience in a stressful situation, which is really good because we knocked it about the back. We waited for a wee opening. McGinn found that opening. His probing pass wasn't actually the best, but Dykes takes advantage, as you know, from Lyndon Dykes, and that in itself, he'd toiled for 85 minutes, not really had a sniff in that game, hadn't played that well, but wasn't really getting much support. And he was still the one that was alert to that. He was still the one that, their centre-half pulled up with cramp, and he was there to poke the ball. Maybe growing up in Queensland might have helped that in terms of the heat. And then he obviously pokes it home. But then the second goal is just so good. It's one of the best goals you will see in that situation.
So satisfying.
You have to take context into account when you're judging the quality of a goal, but to have so many pieces of really composed football in the build-up, so it gets shifted out to McTominay. He's swinging that to the back post, and you can hear Mikey Stewart on the commentary saying, McGinn's in, and you can see what's happening, and Dykes does such a good job to pin the centre-half. McGinn doesn't lash at it. He gets the ball into Dykes. The layoff is superb, and then you can see Kenny McLean's wee skip. He's setting himself so that he can step onto that ball, and he knows it's in the moment he leaves his right foot, and his right foot at that. And for me, Kenny McLean epitomises this team. I really do not understand people who sit and watch football, who are football fans, who know football, and who, when they see a player like Kenny McLean or whatever coming, I don't mean in this game because I think it was still a weird substitution.
I would like to have heard a transcript of you when he came on.
No. but and see when people are like, why is he in the squad? It's like because he is the coolest man in the stadium every single time. He was the one that smashed in the 5th penalty against Israel. He was the one that smashed in the 5th penalty against Serbia. He does that. He is a cool player. He's a big character, and he's a good player. Like, he's maybe not as good as Callum McGregor. He's maybe not as good as John McGinn, Scott McTominay, but he's got like nearly 100 top flight games in England under his belt. He is not like some numpty. And hopefully he stays fit, because again, there's another guy who missed the last one and deserves this one.
But Craig, just think of how good we would have been if Ryan Gauld been picked instead of him. I mean,
yeah, exactly. I mean that's the binary choice that we had as well. But
I think this was a really big game for Clark, and it sort of like took because he kind of got up everyone in Scotland, and it was and I think that was the moment where there was no one else who could talk back to Clark. Now it was like there was no more naysayers. It disappeared. All the people that anyone that had any negative thoughts about it, and then basically got everyone on the side. And like I said, you did get a bit of luck with Dykes, but we're not going to win 5 games on the trot without getting a rub of the green. Like, you know, there's going to, like, it has to happen. But as I said, it was that moment when you're like, fucking hell, we can win when we're shit. Which is such a big feeling in building your confidence and making it. And then, because you can just, there's no scenario now where you think you're out. You know, the fans don't think they're out, and that'll transfer to the players when we're in Germany and just whenever, because we're never going to feel that we're ever out of it.
I'm just like we're talking about the McLean stuff, but 65 minutes, Kieran Tierney's knackered and goes off. We've just gone 1-0 down, and he brings Liam Cooper on, and everyone's like, "What on earth is going on?" But every single player that was on that park, like you heard him in the interview, said like he was like driving them on. I was at McGinn that said he was like Braveheart. Mm-hmm. He was like just saying one chance, we need one chance, and giving it all of that, and then the other, it's we're chasing a goal 12 minutes to go, and it's Gilmore, Armstrong and McLean that come on, and it's like we're not brought a forward on, we're not doing anything like that, and yet it worked. And I've long held the belief that Steve Clarke, as well as a very good manager, is also a very lucky one, but that the amount of times he is lucky stops being lucky. It's like there must be, I don't know what it is, but if he could bottle it and sell it, I think he can make a fortune. But
it's that judgment of being like you're saying, Craig, is he obviously has a really deep understanding of personalities. It's not as simple as just goals. It's not as simple as just talent. He really, really seems to get that, and he knows who he has faith in specific situations, because he doesn't always go for McLean. You know, like he doesn't always do those subs. That's not like it's a trait. It was specific in a game, and so like you're saying about Cooper, it doesn't have to be Cooper. Cooper doesn't play all the time. He uses them relatively sparingly. But in this scenario, right, straight in, and it's obviously because he knows that idea of what he can give. He'll get everyone else going, and he's reliable. And I think Clarke, he understands that. He gets it. What you talk about, the 20th player you pick doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. So you're not picking, it's not about ability when you get to 21, 22. It is about, right, what can they do? What's the intangibles that they can do possibly off the park? Or if I need to put them on, what can they do? Because do we need another guy who's, because the other players aren't going to be that much better. Ryan Gauld, probably maybe it's quite weak personally. I don't know. I've no idea, but it doesn't matter because Gauld wouldn't be getting in the team anyway. So he's obviously thinking about other people, and it works. And he's got that real understanding. He wants to make that club feel, and that means personalities and repetition of people who go all the time really, really matters.
Also, I just wanted to kind of talk about as well before we move on to the next game. Lyndon Dykes, this was his only goal of the campaign, but Craig, it kind of feels like it's been quite a really productive campaign from Dykes overall, just in terms of his performances. He's only got the one goal, but the Norway game was definitely his worst performance of the lot, and yet he came up with a goal and an assist.
And he set up other goals. He set up the McTominay with a really lovely knockdown against Cyprus. I think he was involved in at least a couple more in the campaign. I think there's an argument that he has, maybe if not put himself ahead of Adams in the pecking order, has at least gone neck and neck with him. And I think when the campaign started, Shea Adams started the Cyprus game because Dykes was another one who came on. Adams went off injured, I think, in that game because Adams ended up missing Spain, and Adams hasn't started another game since then. Adams is a better all-round player in terms of running the channels, in terms of like his hold up, but Dykes scores more goals and is just like a chaotic player, and his attitude is like sky high. I think he's been the most important addition to the squad of any player. I think he just brought something that we didn't have. It was just like, I think I've talked about before, we had this like loser mentality, and I think you brought him in and he's just the polar opposite of that. He's just like I suspect he's quite stupid, like quite thick. I'll apologise to him if that's not true, but I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean I think he's like happy-go-lucky, like just like big. Nothing bothers him. He doesn't think about things. Is what I guess that's what I mean. He doesn't think about things very much.
It's very easy to be happy if you don't really think about it, eh?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. Totally.
I don't mean to be say he's stupid. He might not be stupid, but he's you know what I mean. He's not a man who dwells on his thoughts for long. Is my experience of Lyndon Dykes, and I think he is the favourite player of very many of our supporters, and he's certainly one of mine as well. And yeah, this was a campaign for him, absolutely.
Well, 3 days after our win in Norway, the heavens opened up overneath. Overneath? Oh, that's not a word. Overhead.
It should be. It's a good word.
Overneath Hampden Park, as we were getting set to play Georgia. The referee then decided to start the game. I couldn't believe the game was going ahead. I couldn't believe it was still allowed.
I understand why Georgia were angry.
And it was so weird as well that the ref played until we scored. And then he's like, oh, right, okay, now there might be an issue.
I would say I was at that game as well, and I walked to Hampden that night, and I got there a wee bit early because I was going straight from work, so I just picked up something to eat, and I always leave a bit extra time in case I'm held up or whatever. So I'd ended up a wee bit early. I think I was in the stadium about 7 o'clock, which is 45 minutes before kickoff. I didn't really get wet walking to the game. I think it was just coming on as I was going in. It was astonishing how quickly all that rain fell, because I think folk were saying, "Oh, how did the pitch get like that?" It was literally in the space of like 40 minutes that amount of rain fell, and it was one of the weirdest nights I think weirdest games I've ever been at. But yeah, it was.
Was it not something mental like it was like a week's worth of rain fell in it?
Yeah, and like localized over, like that tiny area of like it was. It was. It shouldn't have started. Absolutely shouldn't have started. But I could kind of understand why, because I think from the point where the referee was out doing the warm up to the point where the game kicked off, like I don't think they quite understood quite how much extra rain there had been. The only time I realised it was going to be a problem was when they were taking, they put that plastic sheet, like the tarpaulin, in the centre circle, and the boys came on to drag it off, and I was like, the amount of water that came off it, I was like, oh. This doesn't seem good, and then the players came out and started kicking the balls about pre-match, and it was, I've never seen anything like it, and then we saw that for the first like 6 minutes of the game.
This game is just when you know everything's coming up for you, because it shouldn't be going ahead. The game starts, you get a goal, and then they stop it, so that makes it much more difficult for them to sort of call it off. You don't want to be playing fucking Paisley the next day, that you lose a lot in that scenario. They going through, so the sort of gods, the football gods, sort of shining on us, even though it could have caused it to be called off. But you know what I mean? It just like everything just works our way now, and it's it seems. And I could tell why they were, and they got themselves really pissed off and angry, so they couldn't perform properly after it. So it meant that we played a sort of a weakened mentality of a Georgia team who felt really, really hard done by. And that worked.
I mean, also they'd already dropped quite a few, or they dropped some points, and I think they already have this playoff in the bag where I think they're going to be favourites in that section of the playoffs, probably, despite not really a good campaign in the group. But I think they may have started to think, do you know what, we cannot be fucked with this, and just get this, the end of the season. It was like the middle of June. It was like so far past the end of the season. These guys might have not played a club game for like a month. They're just like, can we just get home,
go on holiday,
and go to Spain? Yeah, go to Spain, not for a football match, just on holiday. And it came through in that, because they were abysmal. That was one of the easiest afternoon or evenings of football when the players came back out.
Yeah, it was proper heads gone stuff for the Georgians. They just absolutely raging that the match was going ahead, like trying the hardest to get it called off, and basically almost boycotting the rest of the game, and eventually made to come back out. And to be fair, what effort by everybody involved to try to get as much water off the pitch as possible. It meant that we could finish that game and grab another 3 points. Then on to September. This was... So Cyprus away, it's obviously, like on paper, it's the second easiest game you're going to get in the group, with the exception of Cyprus at home. And this one was just about, it was such a professional job. It was just so, it was a piece of piss, basically.
I told you it was going to be a piece of piss. I'm trying to say for ages. Fucking worried we were going to fucking Cyprus. The shit.
I think even in like the previous campaigns, we'd gone, like the last two, we'd gone away to, or maybe even just the last one anyway, we'd gone away to like the Faroes and had struggled and only got a victory with a late Dykes goal. I think in the Moldova game, we were a bit more comfortable, but they did get a penalty with about 10 to go, which had they scored it, would have made it maybe a bit of a nervy encounter. So we did still have these kind of performances against nations that, like Craig said at the top, like when Cyprus came to Hampden, we're supposed to go and then defeat. But it did say, it goes to what you said, Tony, that this team is just built differently than Scotland teams of the past, because it was, instead of it being a nervy night where we needed a late goal or we were hanging on or we were playing with any kind of, anxiety at all, it was just not go out, get the job done, and one of the goals.
Flight's 15 minutes into the game.
That was we had them booked before half time, which before half time in the 5th match of an 8-game campaign, we are sorted for the tournament, and correctly so at that point. But to the point where the second half was actually legitimately boring. I don't think I could tell you anything that happened in the second half of that game. Like, I watched it, but we just packed it in quite rightly.
And one player got on the score sheet, we've mentioned him briefly already, but I think it'd be good to go in depth on him a little bit more. Ryan Porteous got the second goal. What a campaign he had, Tony. Did you envision, even as a big Ryan Porteous fan like myself, did you envision him being this good, this quickly in his Scotland career?
I didn't think he would be playing every game. I didn't think that was what would happen. But now I feel like even if everyone's fit, Porteous would probably start the games at the moment. But I've never had any doubt about Ryan Porteous' ability, ever. He made mistakes, and I think when he left Hibs, it was absolutely the right time. I even think he was starting to stunt him. He was actually starting to play poorly, I think, because he was still around at Hibs. He needed to be around better players and challenging himself. I think it would become, he was sort of like coming too easy for him, but that was making him play shit, and you were like, that just makes you look silly, son. But now he's one of those players that you always saw that he looked like he had so many qualities when you watched him. It was just about whether he'd ever put it all together. He had every attribute you could possibly need to be a really good modern day centre half. And the Ukraine game was probably the best thing for him to come into, like a proper backs to the wall job where he has to fully concentrate, and he's not going to have any of the nonsense that can come with Ryan Porteous. So that was the best game to drop him into, I think, where it was just going to be fully concentrating on defending. But now he brings so much more balance because he's another player who can, because he's so good on the ball. And that means that you've got the right in the back three, the guys who play wide on there. It's imperative in terms of you want to go forward. Because it's a big problem in Scottish football that lots of teams who play with a back three are actually shit to watch because they don't have enough quality in the three in the back to really do it, to carry it off properly in terms of in an offensive sense. So
and it's not just him. Like the entire back line is now guys that can play. Because I mean, Jack Hendry, the Nations League campaign, he was probably the standout player. I think he was Scotland's best player in 2022. This year he's been fine. He missed a couple of games. He didn't play in the first two. I think he was injured. He's been pretty good in the other ones, but having suddenly going from what we were talking about with, like, Declan Gallagher, no harm to him, or well, some harm to him in the middle of that three, and having these kind of guys, suddenly you're packing your defence with guys who are confident, super confident, and both of them are very un-Scottish players.
So we move to the final game that's happened so far. Like I said earlier, there's still 2 games to go. We've still got Georgia away. Let's see if we can finally get a victory in Georgia in a qualification campaign. No, it'd still be nice though to do it.
Yeah.
And it would also be nice to beat Norway at home and just kind of get up them and make Haaland look pish again.
I don't think he'll play. They've Manchester City have got Liverpool like 3 days after that game.
Right, okay.
Or 4 days, like the week. I think they've got a friendly and they play us in a completely meaningless.
Norway are just not.
I do not think we will see Erling Haaland at Hampden.
Norway are
That's
just not a serious country now when it comes to football, are they? Like, that's just pathetic.
No, but like they were so meek in that game where we beat them. I mean, Tony, we'll talk about last night as well, but it was just like they're too nice. They're too nice. Like they don't have. I would say we are like Hampden is generally like friendly enough in terms of like nobody's coming and getting battered or whatever, but it's a hostile atmosphere for opposing teams. There was not a single thing hostile about the Laval when we went there, and I think that's also true for Spain last night. And I think there is an element to that where it's maybe it's reflective of the country. I'm sure it's a lovely place to be as a result.
Well, it's the happiest place in the world, apparently.
But from a football point of view, it didn't seem to do them much good.
I've already done a full podcast after the Spain game, so I'll just basically go kind of each of you for your thoughts on the 2-0 defeat away from. And it's a shame it is 2-0 because had it only been 1-0, we still would have had it in our own hands to top the group, and it seems just very unlikely it's going to happen now unless Spain put in some absolutely shite result, which you just can't imagine is going to happen against the pish they've got left to play.
I did read that Alex Gogic's dad scored when Spain beat Cyprus in 1998, so you never know. History may repeat.
Spain still won that game, though, did they not?
No, it was 3-2 to Cyprus.
Right, I think you said Spain beat Cyprus.
Sorry, 3-2 to Cyprus. That game
there you
was,
go.
so you never know. But that game, after a very they obviously had that chance inside. Like, I've not listened to the podcast that you did the other night yet because I forgot my headphones this morning. But the two of you, the first minute, I was like, oh shit, like, because that chance was like glaring. And then they were knocking the ball about so confidently in 15 minutes. And I'm like, oh, this is not looking good for us. And I don't know if Clark changed something or if we just kind of got a grip of it. I thought we were as good in that game as we were in many other games. We weren't as good on the ball. We should have been better on the ball. If we'd been better on the ball, we'd have won the game. But defensively, it was such a solid performance. We've not really mentioned him much, but he started, I think, every single game in this campaign, and he's been an absolute star. And there is no doubt now in my head that he's going to be a very, very elite player. Aaron Hickey was incredible that night. Obviously, he makes a blunder at the end, but who cares about that? I know we talked about it, but he was so good defensively. But talking of technical players, there's another one. But yeah, the shape was so good. Everything about it, we got under the skin again, and that's the blueprint for every away performance against a good team. And it's why I wasn't that worried about the England game, because the England game, despite it being England and despite our players being up for it, I don't think they went up for it. It was a friendly, and the intensity is just not there. The intensity was there against Spain. The concentration was there. You just get that extra 10% in a competitive game. Also, England are better than Spain, sadly, but if we played Spain again in Germany, I would fancy us to know how to beat them. It doesn't mean we would beat them. We've got their number, and we had them, and it was just frustrating. I think ultimately, correctly, the goal was disallowed, but obviously the stuff around that. Even after that, I thought we were going to hang on, and then the goal it didn't really come from a sustained period of pressure or anything. But obviously, you keep riding your luck, then maybe they will score. And we still had chances, and I think we probably were value for something out of that game. To be honest, it was a good performance.
Yeah, I thought I thought that was the game plan was executed really well. Everything that we wanted to do was done. I thought the interesting bit was the lineup. He was clearly thinking about off the ball than on the ball, with dropping McTominay back into midfield, and so he could bring in Ryan Christie, which meant that we lost Gilmore, and not having Adams and having Dykes. Dykes maybe presses better. I don't know. So the idea, because obviously we basically took out the two players that are probably the best at receiving and protecting the ball in Gilmore and Adams, but they're the decisions he makes, and I wasn't sure about that at the start, especially the first 10 minutes. But what I did like is we were able to ride out the pressure at the start. I know they missed that chance, but they really were on top of us for a good 15-minute spell. We couldn't get out our half, and they don't seem to worry. The team, they don't see them start panicking, and eventually they start to sort of be able to move out and put their foot on the ball. But yeah, I thought we played really well. I was really excited. Going back to Hickey, I was worried when Robertson went off, simply because I was Porteous and Hickey together on that right hand side it looks so good because there's quality and defensively it's great because it works really well because Hickey's very aware of his surroundings as a fullback. He knows when to tuck in. He's a very rounded player, but it works really well because he's good at tucking in and it allows Porteous to do more what he naturally wants to do, which is be aggressive. He wants to go out and make the tackle. He wants to step out and do that. So if he does that, that's fine because Hickey's always going to slot in. And I thought that right hand side looked really, really strong. I think that they took off their left winger at half time, Spain.
And the left
yeah,
back.
because they couldn't get a sniff down that side. And then, but then when we had to change it, but it's just so great that Hickey just goes on the other side and just makes no difference to him. Another one that comes down the Lyndon Dykes route. Craig, nothing else is going on in there apart from football. And then Aaron Hickey. So like he just like I bet he was over that mistake right away. And I think that, and I imagine he'll barely be a guy who thinks about it because there's no point. The good thing to do is you just react to it and you get on. And that's what the best players do. You don't see them stewing over it. I was saying this to Fowler. I don't know if it's a thing about Hibs, but see when a player makes a mistake, I'm always just panicked that they're going to be they'll start slicing clearances. They'll do everything wrong. I was never worried about that with Hickey. And now, like you're saying, you've got the left-hand side defence, Robertson and Tierney, and then the right-hand side in Porteous and Hickey. You're always going to be able to move up the pitch, and they're all clever and good. But I thought we were pretty good in that Spain game for what we were going to do in that type of an away game. And I think we were unfortunate with the decision. It's a direct free kick. I don't know if he's going to save it anyway, but I understand that that's still, if he's been touched, then they can't guarantee it. So I look at it more as a shame because I think he would have just scored it regardless, McTominay. And again, his confidence just going up and whacking that from that angle. It's a completely deliberate thing. So yeah, rather than it being like making you worry, yeah, despite losing, I got more confident. Like what Fowler said there, I got more confident about the future and things that we're going to have to do.
Right, guys, we've talked about all the games. Is there anything else to add? Any other individuals that either of you want to focus on before we finish up?
Who have we not talked about? Angus Gunn, correctly so. To be honest, he's actually had next to fuck all to do in the entire campaign. But he's a calm presence, like at the back. I don't think you could point to a single goal we conceded. We have only conceded 3, I think, and I don't think any of them were his fault. I was going to say he saved a penalty. He didn't save a penalty. He convinced their forward to blast it 90 yards over the bar. A couple of all right saves in the Spain game, I guess, at home. But yeah, I mean, that's been a good find because without Gordon, if we'd been relying on one of the other chuckle brothers that were on the bench, there might have been a different story with this campaign because teams would, they're going to go, oh, Liam Kelly of Motherwell, oh, let's watch some tape of him. All right,
shoot.
Okay, we are going to shoot. And so the fact that we've not had that to worry about, you think, who have we not mentioned that's featured?
By the way, Craig, talking about footballers, though, Angus Gunn's really, I didn't realise, he's really good with the ball at his feet. Really
very good. Very good with his feet. Very good with his feet.
Switch and play, he gets it absolutely spot on. So again, when you're adding to that thing, the part of the team that's like you've just got our whole defence and goalkeeper are all very, very comfortable on the ball.
Billy Gilmore, he came in against Georgia and he came on in Norway. 2 very good performances there. He's shown what he can do. He's got his mojo back a bit. Will be a big player going forward. Guys like Hanley started a couple of games. Scott McKenna played well in Spain. Christie had a really good game against Spain at home. Less so away, but
I thought he was quite good away from home. He was the only person that would get us up the park in that game, and he works as like watching him. He really, really do. He works his absolute socks off. He never stops. And just I always find that weird with Christie because he's maybe not as good as I always thought he was. But when he played in Scotland, you thought he would have the highest quality player maybe in the country in terms of ability. So you think that obviously the pressing just like such a big extra, and he works so hard.
And I think Stuart Armstrong's the only other player we haven't really mentioned. He had a couple of decent contributions. He probably he was at least involved in the Kenny McLean winner, which probably puts a few ghosts to rest for him in terms of qualification campaigns, etc. If he hadn't already, but a player who was a big player for us, whose probably importance is waning, but he's a big character as well. And all round, it's a really likable bunch. There's nobody in that squad where you're like, he's a bit Jacob Brown didn't feature, but just worth mentioning. He does exist.
Vibes manager.
Somehow got a move to Luton in the Premier League. I found that bizarre.
And he's starting.
He played right wing back.
He's starting.
I found it absolutely bizarre that they get promoted with all that money, and the first thing they do is, do you want to get the guy who's on the bench for Stoke? Just that doesn't make any sense on any level. I don't understand why you would do it. I don't get it.
So I mean, I don't know. There will be plenty of chances to talk about this, but I think there's not going to be many players that are going to force it. Dominic Hyam, he came on in a game, well done to him. He played a minute in Norway. But there's not going to be that many are going to force their way into this, in my opinion. Like, we've got a pretty stable squad. There might be one or two that appear. I think Ben Doak's the one that obviously people are asking a lot about. I think if he plays a bit for Liverpool, he will get in, because I think he's just clearly very, very good, and he'll give us a wee X factor. The way he brought Turnbull, Gilmour, and Patterson in the last time, and Max Johnston's come into the squad for the France game. I don't think we'll see much of him again for a while, because I think he's not there yet, but it's a good chance for him nonetheless. But you never know. We seem to be losing fullbacks at a rate of, like, if you are a fullback for Scotland, like, we are missing for example 4 left backs. Probably our first 4 or 3, at least 3 of our 4 left backs that could be in the squad, and Robertson, Tierney, Hickey if he shifted over, and Josh Doig isn't even available at once. So you never know with the fullback situation. We just have an array of ones that we can call up anyway, and that's a good sign. But yeah, so I think I am quietly, I'm not even quietly, I'm loudly confident about this tournament coming up.
Great stuff, and I think that'll do us. Thank you very much, Tony.
Cheers.
Thank you very much, Craig.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody for listening. We've done it. We're going to Germany. Yes!
Easy.